2015 was one of the best years in gaming. Bloodborne was released and begun a 10-year journey asking for the 60 FPS patch. Fallout 4 just worked. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is still my favorite game of all time, but before all that, a cheeky little zombie game jumped onto the scene in January and infected us with maybe one of the best survival horror games we've ever had. Probably the most immediate thing that jumped out to me when returning to the original Dying Light was just the grittiness and the dirty feeling of the world. It's absolutely a world that is going through an apocalypse of this strand of rabies that has taken over the city and is basically tearing it apart from the inside out. You know, you can see that from the wind, as it's very windy, and there's all sorts of particle effects of newspapers and birds and things just like zooming around the world. And I don't know, there's a different feeling to Dying Light 1 compared to 2 in terms of its world. 2 feels a little bit more clean in its structure and environment, a bit more lived in, like these people are actually surviving this zombie apocalypse, whereas in 1, no one's really surviving. They're all just kind of getting by, and Antizin is in such a short supply, and everyone's just trying to survive to the next day and survive the night, right? Dying Light. And I think that aspect is much more forefront in your mind as you're playing Dying Light 1 compared to 2, and maybe a little bit into the Beast, where it does feel like from Dying Light 1, this is the very beginning of this journey, whereas as time progresses, people start to get a bit more comfortable in the zombie infected world and sort of understand how things work, and people tend to live and continue to live, whereas at this point in Dying Light 1, this is the very first time this virus has broken out into a region. So you can feel that difference, I think, with Dying Light 1. I also didn't really notice too much until going back to playing Dying Light 1, how much the world, especially the slums, is essentially just like a playground for parkour and just like your enjoyment. Like the game knows that it's a game in a way, because there are traps everywhere, there are ramps everywhere, things to climb on, and like the world isn't really realistic in its structure or design in what you would maybe expect in a city. But I think that's also why it works, because it's not trying to be super realistic. It's trying to be like a parkour playground with some zombies around that are going to attack you at various times. It's definitely a video game, and it knows it's a video game, and that adds to that world design and the fun aspect of exploring the world, as there's always a ramp that you can go up to take you to a rooftop, or, you know, climb on this building, especially at night when you're running away from volatiles. That aspect feels really strong because there's always a pathway that you can take, and you're sort of doing that problem solving at the same time when you're running away, to be like, oh, there's a ramp, take that ramp, go up on this building, and then use that building to get over here, and you can sort of follow that way. And that's part of the fun, I feel, in Dying Light 1 and Dying Light in general. It's not just Dying Light 1, but that was something I noticed as my immediate return. One of the major things that I noticed is in Dying Light 1, the progression is so much better than Dying Light 2, and also Dying Light the Beast for that matter as well, as it's basically just a variation on Dying Light 2. So how it works in Dying Light 1 is you have a survivor rank or system that you can then level up to gain survivor basic skills. You've also got the combat skills, which is all your general combat abilities, and then you've got the parkour one, which is for all the parkour stuff. Now, any of your main quests and general experience that you do and returning airdrops back to base gives you survivor rank to rank up the basic stuff, like your crafting, things like that. Any combat activities upgrade your combat points to then give you ranks in combat, so you can unlock new combat skills. Same with parkour, like every time you grapple on a ledge or jump off something, you'll gain parkour points that you can then spend when you do level up those trees. Now at night, all of that experience is doubled, because that's the same as in Dying Light 2, that because the night's much more dangerous, you get more experience at night, so it's much easier to grind up those levels at night. What I really like about these trees is how deep they are, and also that there are tangible things all along the line that you're chasing. Obviously, like the basic example is that as you get further down the line, you get the grappling hook, which then makes like parkouring and just traveling, especially in that second map, significantly easier, because you can just grapple your way around. And there's other like tangible skills, like being able to camouflage yourself from the zombies so you can hide from them just in plain sight. But also I really like that there are these expert specific skill nodes that when you take them, Your parkour are just generally fast, like the animations will be quicker. Same with combat, like it upgrades your stamina usage. And these are missing in Dying Light 2 to some regard. Like in Dying Light 2, they just focused on those actual skills, like learning to be able to, ride along a wall or get the drop kick, which, the drop kick is in all of the Dying Light games, and fair enough, it's a skill that you unlock. But I feel this system here has much more of a branching progression feeling. And as you get better as Kyle Crane and understand how to parkour and you sort of learn the game's systems, Kyle Crane gets faster at doing those animations and like lifting himself up to things, because there's definitely a feeling in the early game when you grapple onto a ledge and you slowly like grapple your way up, but then as you get those skills to become a parkour expert, you do that much faster. And that's something that you don't really do as Aiden in Dying Light 2, and I didn't really notice that in Dying Light the Beast either in my previous time playing it. So I do hope that maybe in a Dying Light 3 we do get a bit more of these deeper progression methods, and that does also reflect in some of the crafting and weapon usage, as well as there was a lot more depth to the blueprints and crafting system in Dying Light 1 than there is in 2, and they are bringing some of that back in the Beast, at least for what I've played at this point. But so we have to wait for the full release to understand the exact depth of that. Probably the same for the progression as well, but I definitely feel that progression for a Dying Light game was done right in Dying Light 1, and it's a shame that they've sort of simplified that system into 2 and into the Beast, and I do hope we go back this way a little bit more, because I love deep progression systems, and it's a shame that they've gone the other way. One aspect as well that is noticeably different in Dying Light 1 is the night, and they do build this up much more in Dying Light 1 to be actually scary, and I think that's part of the narrative structure of the game as well, and obviously the Dying Light aspect of it. But there's a couple of reasons I think that it works really well in 1, and it does work in 2, but it's less dangerous. It feels much more manageable in Dying Light 2 compared to Dying Light 1. Now, in Dying Light 1, the atmosphere is absolutely on point here. Like the night is incredibly dark. The only thing you really have is the fires you see in the distance and the occasional UV light if you have actually built those safe houses. And the volatiles are absolutely everywhere. And that is true for Dying Light 2 as well. But I really think one of the big differences here is using a mini-map rather than a compass. So in Dying Light 2 and in the Beast, you have a compass at the top of your screen, very Bethesda-esque in like your north, south, east, west, and like your markers will show up on the compass when you get close to them. In Dying Light 1, you actually have a mini-map, which does the same function essentially. However, with the mini-map, you can actually see when there are volatiles or like elite infected that are near you and going to chase you down. I actually think the mini-map works really well to add to that survival horror aspect, because you can see when there's like 6 volatiles chasing you without even having to turn around. So you're immediately more stressed because you know that they're on your ass and they're like coming for you. Whereas in Dying Light 2, you kind of have to turn around and see them, and you can hear them, but you don't have that constant reminder that you're there on your tail. I think the sound does add to that as well. Like there is something about that, like just the visceral nature of the sound in Dying Light 1, and especially when you hear the noise of the infected in the distance, and it does create this like sense of terror that they're coming for you. The night is really strong in Dying Light 1, and they are getting a bit closer to that in Dying Light the Beast. I'll have to wait and see for the full game for that, but they are actually trying to get some of that Dying Light 1 feel back. But honestly, the mini-map, I'm not sure why they went away from it. I think it's a very common trend these days to go away from a mini-map. Like games seem to think that they're unrealistic, and they are. Like, so is a compass though, right? Like, what's the difference to me? And I suppose in some regard, in certain games, you're sort of playing by watching the compass rather than by watching what your character's actually doing, which I do get. But I think that a simple compass like they had in Dying Light 1 is quite valuable to have, and it's a shame that they've gone away from it, as I do really think it works to add to that terror when there are volatiles and things chasing you, but also to be able to see exactly where you're going and know where locations are. I do like a little bit of extra help sometimes than a compass that you do have in 2 and the Beast. I feel like at this point we're maybe shitting on Dying Light 2 or the Beast to some regard, because we've talked about them comparatively, but I do quite like Dying Light 2. Like, I think it is a good game, and so far what I have played of the Beast I did absolutely enjoy. But it does just seem like some of the decisions and changes they made from Dying Light 1, and maybe it is a little bit of like nostalgia from this being the first Dying Light and having to compare it to the more modern ones and be like, I did like this one the best, so maybe it's these reasons that I liked it the best. But I do think to some regard that they're all fine video games. It's just interesting to discuss what they've changed and maybe trying to understand why they changed it and decided to go away from, say, having a mini map or the night and things just being generally more action based. But that's also a bit reflective in the story as well, as in Dying Light 2, you had all those dialogue options and decisions you could make throughout that journey, which aren't really in Dying Light 1. It's absolutely a linear story that's told through the perspective of Crane, and I do think they got the story right from that perspective, at least in Dying Light 1, as there's a really good hook to that start of that journey, as you feel a bit of guilt because as soon as you land, you get infected and then you immediately get someone killed because of it. And then you're sort of trying to build up that trust with the tower and also with Rice to some regard, as you are essentially doing that for your own personal gains to get that document back so that you can then return that to the GRE and nobody knows you're working for the GRE and that you even have a working radio to some regard. It's interesting as that aspect. And I think the main killer is when you destroy the Antizin. As the game builds up how important Antizin is, there's a lot of side quests around finding Antizin, or even the fake Antizin that is given to someone at the tower that you can then go and destroy those bandits who are giving out fake Antizin. The game teaches you about these systems and the lore really interestingly in these side quests, and then you make that decision to destroy the Antizin, which in turn has its ripple effect. But I think that the story here is quite strong, and it's because it's linear, right? Because you can have those linear pathways for Kyle without having to worry about, maybe this A path or this B path. I think to some regard in terms of game design and stories in games, there is absolutely a reason to go around like the multiple pathways option, but there's also a reason to tell a really cohesive narrative depending on the story you're trying to tell. But also when you do tell that cohesive one path linear narrative, you're not splitting up your narrative chops, your writing skills to try and make 2 or 3 different storylines branch out and work, as well as if you could just make one really tight narrative that makes sense for the characters that you're trying to develop. And I think Dying Light 1 does that really, really strong, especially when you get into some of the twists and the turns that happen, characters that die and characters that get killed off. Dying Light 1 does that so strong, and it really teaches you about the struggles of this world. And Dying Light 2 strays away from that a little bit as you learn a bit about Aiden and his past. So having played about 5 hours of Dying Light the Beast, many more of Dying Light 2, and then returning to Dying Light 1 here for the first time since back at launch, actually. I don't think I really played it other than the following DLC when that first came out. I think there is something about Dying Light 1. I don't think it gets enough credit for why Dying Light is the franchise that it is today. And it's a franchise that Techland has essentially bet on over and over and are continuing to bet on with the Beast, and probably will after this point. If you're wondering if you should play Dying Light in 2025 before the Beast, or even just in general, I think you absolutely should, because it's quite a fantastic game, both in its structure, its world that it presents you, its stories that it tells, even just the minor side quests. It's quite a moment for Techland, I think, after they did Dead Island, the original one, and then came out with their own franchise, with their own spin on it, with the parkour aspects. And I do absolutely think that it's one of the better games from the PS4 generation, and one that's less talked about considering the impact that it has in making Techland follow this as their franchise, and it essentially made them the studio they are today. And I would recommend that you play Dying Light, especially before Dying Light the Beast, considering Kyle Crane's story does continue from the DLC from the first game, which we may do a recap on here in this channel. If you are interested, let me know that in the comments, and also let me know your thoughts on Dying Light, the first game, in the comments down below. Have you played the DLCs? Because there's plenty of DLC support that the game got, as it did go on as well. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.